The evening began like many others in the Parker house, quiet and ordinary, the kind of night that never announces it will matter later. Outside, the Ohio sky was already dark, the street calm, only the soft glow of porch lights lining the road. Inside, the living room felt warm and familiar, shaped by years of routine and shared moments that no longer felt special because they happened so often. Emily Parker sat on the couch with her legs folded beneath her, a thin blanket resting across her lap. She held the remote loosely, though the movie had already been playing for nearly 30 minutes. A Netflix drama flickered across the screen, its characters talking about love, mistakes, and second chances. Emily heard the dialogue, but she wasn't listening. David sat beside her, leaning back into the couch cushion, his attention fixed on the television. He looked calm, relaxed, the way a man looks after a long workday when he believes everything in his life is steady. His arm rested along the back of the couch, close to Emily's shoulders but not touching her. That small space between them felt wider than it should have. On the rug in front of them, their 10-year-old son Noah lay on his stomach, his chin propped on his hands. A bowl of popcorn sat nearby, half empty. He kicked his feet slowly, humming to himself, glancing up at the screen now and then. He was comfortable, unaware of the quiet tension that had settled into the room over the past year. Emily smiled faintly at something the characters said, but her smile faded almost as soon as it appeared. Her thoughts drifted, as they often did. Lately, to moments outside this room, afternoon conversations that lasted longer than they should have, text messages that made her feel lighter, younger, more noticed. She told herself it was harmless. She told herself it was nothing. The movie continued, background noise filling the space where conversation used to live. Then Noah shifted on the rug. He rolled onto his side, looked up at the screen, then turned, his head toward Emily. His voice was casual, curious, completely innocent. "Mom," he said, "is that the show you watch when Uncle Mark comes over?" The words landed softly, but their impact was immediate. Emily's body stiffened. Her heart skipped, then began to race. For a split second, she thought she had imagined it, that her mind was playing tricks on her. But the silence that followed told her otherwise. David turned his head slowly, his eyes moving from the screen to Noah, then to Emily. His expression shifted from relaxed to confused. "What do you mean?" David asked, his tone light, almost amused. Noah shrugged, unaware that anything was wrong. "I don't know. You watch it a lot. And you laugh more when he's here." Emily felt heat rise to her face. Her hands tightened around the blanket. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. David let out a small laugh, though it sounded forced even to him. "You must be mixed up, buddy," he said. "Mom watches lots of shows." Noah nodded, already losing interest. He turned back to the TV, the moment forgotten as quickly as it had come. But for Emily, nothing felt the same. The room seemed smaller, the air heavier. The movie kept playing, but its sound felt distant, muffled by the pounding in her chest. She stared at the screen without seeing it, her mind racing through memories she had tried not to examine too closely. Marquis had been part of their lives for years, a college friend. Someone who had known Emily before marriage, before motherhood, before life became a series of responsibilities and quiet compromises. He had started stopping by more often over the past year, always polite, always friendly, always staying just long enough to talk. At first, it felt harmless, familiar, comforting. Emily had told herself she deserved conversation that went beyond grocery lists and school schedules. She told herself that laughter was not a crime, that feeling understood did not mean betrayal. She had never touched him, never said the words out loud. But emotions had a way of growing quietly, especially when fed by loneliness. And now, her son had noticed. David shifted beside her, clearing his throat. He adjusted his position on the couch, his arm dropping from the backrest to his lap. Emily felt the absence of that small closeness more sharply than before. "You're okay?" David asked, his eyes still on the screen. Emily nodded quickly. Just tired. It was a lie. It's not a dramatic one, but a practiced one. The kind that slipped out easily because she had been using it for months. The rest of the movie passed in silence. Noah eventually curled up under his blanket and dozed off, his breathing slow and steady. Emily watched him, her heart aching with guilt. Children noticed more than adults liked to believe. They saw patterns. They felt changes. When the credits rolled, David stood up and stretched. "I'll carry him to bed," he said. Emily watched as David lifted Noah gently, careful not to wake him. The sight filled her with a sudden wave of emotion. This was the man she had built a life with, the father of her child. The person who had stood beside her through sickness, job changes, late nights, and early mornings. She had not meant to drift away. It had happened slowly, quietly, without clear intention. David returned a few minutes later, his face serious now. "Let's turn the TV off," he said. Emily nodded and clicked the remote. The silence that followed was different from before. It was heavy, waiting. David stood near the kitchen counter, leaning against it, his arms crossed. He didn't look angry. He looked thoughtful, hurt but controlled. "Emily," he said carefully, what Noah said earlier. "Is there something I should know?" Emily swallowed. Her heart pounded. She could lie again. She could brush it off, pretend it meant nothing. But something in David's voice told her that pretending would only deepen the distance between them. "There's nothing physical," she said finally, her voice quiet. "Nothing like that." David nodded once, slowly. But she took a deep breath. "But I think I let myself feel something I shouldn't have." The words hung in the air. David closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. "I knew something was different," he said. "I just didn't know what it was." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't plan it. I didn't want it to happen. I just felt lonely." David looked at her then, really looked at her. Not with anger, not with blame, but with sadness. "I was right here," he said softly. "I just didn't know you needed me to look closer." That sentence broke something inside her. "I should have told you," Emily whispered. "I should have said something before it got this far." David nodded. "We both should have talked more." They stood there, the weight of unspoken years between them. No shouting, no accusations. Just the quiet pain of realizing how far apart two people can drift while living in the same house. That night, David went to bed. Emily sat alone at the kitchen table. Her phone rested in her hands, the screen glowing softly in the dark. Mark's name stared back at her. She typed slowly, choosing each word with care. "I need to step back," she wrote. "This isn't fair to my family. Hope you understand." She stared at the message for a long time before sending it. When she finally did, she felt both relief and grief. Some connections were never meant to grow, no matter how comforting they felt. Letting go hurt, even when it was the right thing. To do, Emily turned off the light and walked upstairs. David lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. She slipped under the covers beside him, leaving a small space between them. Unsure of what came next, but as she lay there in the darkness, one thing was clear, the sentence spoken by a child during an ordinary movie night had changed everything, and the real story was only beginning. Morning came quietly, without apology or comfort. Sunlight slipped through the curtains and rested on the walls of the bedroom, touching everything except the space between Emily and David. They had slept facing opposite sides, close enough to feel each other's presence, far enough to feel the distance. Emily woke first. Her chest felt tight, her thoughts already moving faster than the day itself. She watched David breathe, steady and calm, and wondered how something so solid could feel so fragile overnight. She slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake him, and went downstairs. The house was still. She made coffee out of habit, not desire, and sat at the kitchen table with her phone face down. She didn't want to see if Mark had replied. Whatever he said wouldn't change what she had already decided. When David came down later, dressed for work, he nodded at her and poured himself coffee. They spoke only about simple things: Noah's school schedule, a meeting David had later, the weather. Their voices were calm, but something real was missing. Still, Emily felt grateful there was no anger. Silence felt safer than shouting. After David left, Emily drove Noah to school. He chatted about a science project and a new friend. She listened closely, holding on to every word, aware of how easily moments slipped by unnoticed. When she dropped him off, she watched him walk toward the building and felt a deep need to be better. Not perfect, just honest. The day passed slowly. Emily cleaned the house more than needed, trying to keep her hands busy. Her phone buzzed once. Mark had replied, "I understand. Take care," the message read. That was all. Emily stared at the screen, then locked the phone and placed it in a drawer. The chapter was closed. It had to be. That evening, David came home earlier than usual. He didn't turn on the TV. Instead, he sat across from Emily at the table. The space between them felt intentional now, not accidental. "I don't want to live like roommates," he said plainly. "I don't want us to pretend." Emily nodded. "Neither do I." They talked for hours, not in long speeches, but in honest pieces. David spoke about feeling invisible, about carrying responsibility quietly and assuming love would stay without effort. Emily spoke about missing connection, about feeling like she had become a role instead of a person. There were tears, but no shouting. Pain, but also relief. "I never stopped loving you," Emily said. "I just stopped knowing how to reach you." David leaned back, exhausted. "I want to try," he said. "But I need to know you're here, fully." "I am," she said, and meant it. The next weeks were awkward but intentional. They went on walks after dinner, not romantic ones, just quiet ones. They asked each other questions they hadn't asked in years. Sometimes the answers hurt. Sometimes they healed. Emily deleted old message threads. She stopped checking her phone for comfort. When loneliness came, she spoke it out loud instead of hiding it. David began coming home earlier. He listened more. He touched her hand when he passed her in the kitchen. Small things, but meaningful. Noah noticed. One night, as they sat on the couch again, a different show playing this time. Noah looked between them and smiled. "You're sitting closer now," he said. Emily reached for David's hand without thinking. He squeezed back. She felt something warm return. Not excitement, not longing, but something deeper. Something earned. Later that night, after Noah was asleep, Emily rested her head on David's shoulder. They didn't talk. They didn't need to. The silence felt different now. Softer trust didn't come back all at once. Some days were heavy, some memories lingered. But they faced them together. Months passed. On their anniversary, David surprised Emily with dinner at home. Nothing fancy, just candles, music, and food they both loved. They talked about the past without fear and the future without pretending. Emily realized something important that night. Love wasn't about never being tempted or never feeling lonely. It was about choosing honesty before secrecy, effort before distance. She had nearly lost that choice. As they cleaned up together, David looked at her and smiled. "It's a real one. I'm glad we didn't give up," he said. Emily smiled back. "Me, too." Upstairs, Noah slept peacefully, unaware of how close his family had come to breaking. But his simple words had done something powerful. They had pulled the truth into the light. Sometimes the smallest voices say the biggest things, and sometimes love doesn't end with a mistake. Sometimes it begins again with a choice.